Okay, you're very welcome back to the Rossie Podcast. I'm joined again by Roscommon's Herald Sports Editor Ian Cooney to look back on Roscommon's 1-point defeat to Kerry in Killarney at the weekend. Ian, it's a familiar feeling. Last week it was a last kick of the game last week, really. Dinglebeth St. Bridget's. This week, last fist of the game, last touch of the game. Tomas Kennedy, brace Roscommon Hearts. Oh, it's gutting because, you get so close and no one saw this performance coming, and to be that close to getting a result in Killarney, it is gutting, to be honest, to be especially like that.
It is gutting, Darragh, but I think, when the dust settles, in the next 24 hours and Roscommon get back training, they'll realise that they did so many things right during that game, and hopefully, despite the results, they'll have generated enough momentum to take into what is now a huge game against Monaghan next weekend. But yeah, everyone is talking about the finish, about the hooter. I'm sure we'll go into a bit of detail on it. But yeah, for the second week in a row, a Kerry team denies Roscommon at the death. And I suppose even just like the Bridges game, there was a lot of confusion at the end as well. So yeah, we just have to lick our wounds and move on. There's not a lot of time really to be crying over spilt milk. The thing I take from it is that Roscommon went down to Killarney with 6 debutants in the starting 15, introduced another 2, I think, during the match, and played with courage, played with conviction, had a clarity of purpose in everything they did, and came within a whisker of getting what would have been a deserved draw against the All-Ireland champions in their own backyard. So that's what I take from it, Darragh. Really, really good performance and something we need to build on.
Absolutely, and you look at the game, first half, we actually start well, we're in the game, first 10 or 15 minutes, then Kerry get a spell where we can't win a kick out really, and they punish us and get 8-2 ahead. Then we come back, and I think we score 1-4 without reply. We actually are leading maybe with a minute or two again before half-time, and unfortunately, Kerry get that goal. I was one about decisions. That was a square ball, whether you like it or not. That was definitely a square ball, and it felt like it even at the ground. Said, yeah, geez, he had to be nearly in the square where he caught that. So that was unlucky, and so you go in. Actually, it was 3 down, 1-9 to 1-6 at half time. Come out again, and you know what? Start okay. Again, Kerry get the bit of the lead. They get the penalty. They get 7 up. I think 2-13 to 1-9. But Jesus, for fairness to these lads yesterday, and again, you could easily feel sorry yourself saying, we're down lads here, we're down Bridget's, you can make excuses. Jeez, they rolled the socks up, got into Kerry, and they were fully deserving to get actually ahead. And we may be biased, but I think most neutrals watched the game, think Roscommon deserved at least a point. And do you know what? I thought they were nearly the better team as well in a large spells of that. You take David Clifford out of that Kerry team, who was just absolutely magnificent again. Roscommon, geez, they really put in an excellent performance.
Yeah, Roscommon looked like the team that were going to win the match coming down the home straight, and Kerry needed leadership. And their go-to man, David Clifford, stepped up and, kicked some wonder scores. And quite simply, they wouldn't have won the game without him. And Owen McCormack, who was on him, did as good as any defender could have done on him. But you just can't beat sheer class. Like, there's no defending the scores that Clifford gets. He's just a freak of nature. He's the best we've ever seen. And you're just going to have to accept that when you're playing Kerry. It's, I suppose, keeping the parts around him quiet. And I thought for the most part, Roscommon did that exceptionally well. When you say Roscommon went 7 points down and, they could have down tools and said, okay, we played well for 3/4 of the game. But no, Roscommon weren't content with that. The young players really rolled up the sleeves. Senan Lamb came thundering into the game. Conor Ryan, Keith Doyle began to get a stranglehold in the middle of the field. Jack Duggan comes on, has a lovely cameo, kicks 2 points. And of course, you had Darragh Craig and Jimmy Murta up front who were just shooting the lights out. So, there was just so much to be positive about Darragh. I think it was probably Roscommon's best performance, I would argue, since beating Tyrone in the championship in 2000, 2 years ago. There was just a lot of the pedestrian stuff we saw last year was just binned. Roscommon just went for it, as you have to do in this game. There was pace in the team. Dara Heenahan's run for Diarmuid Murtagh's goal, he just left the Kerry defence trailing in his wake. And what I took from it is, when you get the likes of Conor Hand and players like that, you bring them back into that team, the pace that we get into the team, is something that, we can be very, very excited about and probably haven't had in the team for a long, long time.
And the big thing I took away from it as well was the pressure up front, and it was a constant throughout the game. Not letting Kerry out easy on a kick out, and if they do go short or they're inside their 21, we're going for them. And geez, Roscommon turned over ball, they were pushing up. I didn't see that last year, really. And that consumes a lot of energy, and they were still doing it towards the end. That was the big thing for me, that they were pushing up man on man, trying to pressurize Kerry. And I don't know what the overall stats were, but I'm sure the stats team and Mark Dow would be quite happy with the amount of turnovers they got on Kerry in their own half as well.
And that's what Mark talked about afterwards, Darragh. It was about, the work rate and that honesty of effort, that you pin Kerry back, you put pressure on them, and hopefully gain a reward. And Roscommon did that brilliantly. I can remember countless times when Kerry were pinned in the corner, and they just found it very, very difficult to get out, because Roscommon, were up their backsides, really, really trying to get the ball off them. And that was great to see. And as you say, we didn't see enough of it last year. But it comes with the caveat, Darragh, that it's just one game. You need to back it up now with the result. While a moral victory was great last weekend, and a huge Roscommon crowd went to Killarney, came home with, as I've said in my report this week, with hope in their hearts. But now the real currency next weekend is putting league points on the board. And given, the way Monaghan were soundly beaten by Armagh, up on their home patch in Clonus, obviously you'd be expecting a reaction from Monaghan, but Roscommon in a very good place heading into this game now. And as I said, they've had a very, very good first album. The second one is always that bit more difficult, and now they've got to come with a performance, get league points on the board, and just, I suppose, justify the strides they've made under Mark Dowd on the evidence of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's the thing. A good performance like that comes with a bit more expectation now going into next week, that we're going to see a good performance, and we're going to push Monaghan close and try and hopefully get that win. And I would imagine Scottstown players, maybe a certain Rory Beggan and a few, might be just wheeled out for next week. I know one of them, Ryan O'Toole, played yesterday for Monaghan. He was on the Scottstown team. So I would imagine Gabriel Bannigan, Monaghan naturally enough would be targeting Roscommon as a must-win 2-point game for them to stay in the division. So I would say we could be seeing a few Scottstown players next week. So look, hopefully bringing that bit of form into next week. And the performances as well. I mean, I name-checked him in the Mayo game, Darragh Craig, and there was very little positives in that Mayo game. And it's probably shown is, don't read too much into pre-season, because I was concerned. I have to say I was concerned what I seen. But between trying new players and changes and all that, it is pre-season for a reason. But he was one of the bright sparks against Mayo a couple of weeks ago. I thought in full forward, his movement, he won everything, sharp, just looked like he was raring to go for a big year. And by God, he's marking Jason Foley's on him, who was one of the best fullbacks in the country, and he gave him a torrid time. Darragh won everything really that went into him.
He did, Darragh, and the Kerry lads in the press box, they can't. They said it openly after. They can't remember Jason Foley ever getting the roasting that he got by Darragh Craig on Sunday. We've been waiting for this performance for Darragh. We know that he has it in his locker to get to the next level. He's one of those players that I think with your Diarmuid Murtaghs and your Enda Smiths should be contending for All-Star awards. And I think he showed his class on Sunday. 9 points, some absolutely brilliant scores amongst that, including a 2-pointer. Thought Diarmuid Murtagh as well was back to his best. Kind of wasn't really in corner forward, was out more around the arc, looking to get it on as a shooter. Did really, really well. Was excellent. And a lot of those Roscommon players can be really, really happy with their performance. It was just, there was encouragement everywhere. Kerem Kyo, Paddy Gavin. When you look at the likes of even Paddy Gavin, the Owen Collar and Darragh Heenan, all these Sen Lam, like they don't have a lot of caps, should we say, between them.
Yeah.
And to have so many players like that in the team, and for them to play as well as they did, we're in a period of transition. I know people don't like that word, but we've got to bring these new players through. We have to see if they're good enough. We have to see if they're ready. And the evidence on Sunday was, yes, they are ready, but you got to be consistent now, and you got to do that in every game. And if Roscommon play as well as they played yesterday, they'll win a few games and they'll be very, very close in a lot of others.
Yeah, and the big thing now, and just the way the fixtures fell, and I said it before, the thing, 4 of the next 5 games are in the Hyde. The way they fell, and the other game is in Galway, and we know Salt Hill very well, so look, it's an away game, but it's a ground you know quite well, and you play there quite often, so it's a big opportunity now. You have Monaghan, I think it's Armagh after that. We beat Armagh in 23 when we stayed up. So the home games are the big ones. You have, even a Dublin coming to town. Who knows? They're in under transition as well. So I think just on the basis of this game, and let's be honest, everyone thought Roscommon were. I mean, the bookies' handicap was 8, so everyone thought it was going to be probably 8 to 10 points at least. To put in the performance we did, yes, the ending, and we will get onto it, but there's so much to take from it, and especially those young lads there you mentioned, like even the likes of Senna Lamb was I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. He played last year in games, but you can really see him coming on even more. He was only under 20 a couple of years ago.
Oh, he was absolutely superb. And what Senan Lang gives you is he's direct. He goes directly at the opposition. He very rarely sort of turns back. He wants to be on the front foot all the time. And that's the way the modern game is now. You got to have players that just want to get forward, be positive in possession. And we didn't see enough of that last year. But I keep coming back to this point. The Kerry performance, will only stand on its merits if you back it up now with the win against Monaghan. And you look at Monaghan, I think Gabriel Bannigan said that the Scottstown players wouldn't be back until maybe the third game. But as you say, Ryan O'Toole played yesterday. I think there'll be an SOS, for Rory Beggan to be in goal for them on Sunday in the Hyde. And then, if Roscommon were to win, Mark Dowd talked about yesterday filtering the Bridget's players back into the team. And wouldn't it be great to be going into the Armagh game with maybe a Rory Fallon or a Conor Hand or a Shane Canan, coming into the team. I think Brian Stack and Eddie Nolan are going to be out for a while with injuries. Pierce Frost, fellas like that, coming back into the team, into a winning team. And that will provide further encouragement. And, if Roscommon play as well as they played in Killarney, the next few games against Monaghan, Armagh, Galway away, and Dublin in the Hyde, in my opinion, are winnable.
Yeah.
Now, that's not getting ahead of ourselves. That's just on the basis of what we saw yesterday. I know people would say, sure, Kerry probably aren't back training at full throttle and it's the first game and, but like Roscommon, a new look team, will gain so much from the way they performed yesterday. But now they've got to back it up. They've got to get points on the board. And if, it's a cup final now against Monaghan on Sunday, win that, you've got a chance to stay in the division. Lose it, and realistically, you're not going to stay in Division 1.
Yeah, it'll be a tall order after that. But you're looking at the bench as well, and I would say, a lot of emphasis on the Bridges fellas coming back. And look, we do need them. This thing that we don't is and keep the lads there. But the lads that started there Sunday and the lads that came on, they have the jersey. It's the Bridges fellas that have to come back and take it off them. So if you play well, but just use, for instance, Aaron Brady, will say, who played actually very well, yesterday, and probably actually definitely 1 point, probably 2, he prevented actually going over the bar
Yeah.
in the first half. So he was actually very good. But Aaron Brady plays well and Roscommon play well. Conor Carroll has a fight back on his hands to get that jersey off Aaron Brady. You're not going to change players that are playing well, and if Roscommon are getting results too quickly. You're looking at Jack Duggan, for instance, who probably only played a couple of FED games a few years ago. He hasn't actually played, I might be corrected here, in a league or a championship game.
Yeah.
Wasn't on the panel last year. Comes back in, point to prove, gets 10 minutes and, geez, slotted over 2 great points and with confidence as well. So that's what you think. Jack Duggan now will be towards the top of the subs list. He'll be in the 26. And, that's what you want. You want lads putting their hands up, grasping the opportunity to stake a claim for the games to come.
And that's probably the environment that Mark Dowd, Ian Daly, John Rogers, Jason Sherlock have created, that that any one of those 26 players that are picked on any given match day panel can come in and do a job. And the evidence we saw in Killarney was that, yes, Paul Carey came on, should have probably won the match for Roscommon, but, did a lot of good things, was centrally involved. Kieran Lennon was on for 10 minutes, tried hard. We didn't see Declan Kenny, who was probably one of the most consistent club players in Roscommon over the last couple of years. So there's more to come in terms of, seeing players in the league. And certainly the evidence is that the competition for places is fierce. And then when the Bridges players come back in, and don't forget the Strokestown players as well, we've got Colin Leary and Shane McGinley will be coming into that mix, hoping to get onto the panel. It means that, the team that maybe finishes the game will be just as competitive or just as strong as the team that starts it. And in the modern game, it's so attritional, so fast. That's what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a couple of talking points. And do you know what? Before I get into the finish, there's one other rule. I don't know did you notice this during the game? This advanced mark rule, and even it goes back into the advantage rule, that twice in that second half, Kerry got advanced marks. And David Clifford caught the ball inside whatever the 21 or, it went the required distance. So Brendan Cawley blows it. David Clifford is actually nearly jogging out to the 2-point arc because he knows he has the handy free in his back pockets. Now, I just think that's a farcical rule. I think some of these advantage rules that the hand is up for about, it's nearly like you have an unlimited attack. You can, play it for 30 seconds, 40 seconds. You have the free still in the back pocket. I think some of these rules need looking at, but unfortunately, the FRC is no more, and these are locked in. So I don't know what your take is on some of those rules. We'll get into the Hoosier business in a minute, but what would you be thinking of overall those kind of technical ones? And the other one, in fairness, now we probably actually got away with it, the handing the ball back as well. That actually I felt in the ground at the time. We probably got lucky with that. But every team is doing that. Every team is doing that, and unfortunately, it's up to the referee on his interpretation as well on that.
Yeah, and too much of it is down to interpretation, Darragh. I mean, a lot of these big games now are been decided by some of these rules. Jack O'Connor was at pains afterwards to point out, and he's been consistent on it, in fairness to Jack, about this. Mike Breen had the ball. It was slapped out of his hand by a Roscommon player, and the ball was brought up 50 yards, which allows Jared Murt to come out and kick a 2-pointer to put the Rossies 2 points up. But I said that was probably the one decision that went in Roscommon's favour the whole game. I mean, you look at Tomas Kennedy's first half goal was, I probably didn't even realise it at the time because I was just kind of admiring the finish, but it was a square ball when you look back at replays. I know we're going to get into the hooter, but surely to God, Jim Murta and Senan Lam are entitled to a free that goes the other way, that leads to Shawnee O'Shea bombing the ball in on top of Kennedy and them getting the winning score. Decisions like that are, I just hope we're not talking, in the Mayo game and Roscommon have maybe been relegated by a point, they're just a point behind, and we'll be going back to this wondering what might have been. The mark, it just nearly seems too easy for a lot of these players, like the likes of Clifford and Kennedy and these fellas. Sure, they're huge men. Lump ball in on top of them. Kerry are renowned for their foot pass, and they're going to get marks. So yeah, there's still a lot of tweaking to be done, and of course, then we had the confusion at the end with the hooter. These games matter too much for someone's interpretation of the rules, or kind of a discrepancy where the match clock in the stadium is different to the match clock on the television. There's too much riding on these games for them to be decided by such small margins.
Yeah, well, look, we'll go back to that final score. As you say there, Paul Kerry actually had the chance. I don't know, was it even inside that minute as well, or a minute and a half? We actually did have a chance. Kerry come up, we win it back. Actually, Ronan Daly comes out with it. Now, could Ronan maybe have held on to it? Was kind of an awkward one for Diarmid, but I said 9 times out of 10, you just get those frees. And especially at the end, you're thinking the referee might say, you know what, a draw. That kind of way. So I was surprised he didn't give that. Kerry win it back. We dispossess them. Senan Lam gets it. And again, Senan's nearly like a fella coming on top of him. And there's 2 fellas around him. And again, you just get those kind of frees. So I'm surprised not one of those was given. Now they're saying, and okay, I did watch it back. Senan's leg does come up on the Kerry fellas. It looks like he kicks out. Now I don't know. I still think it's extremely harsh, but that's clearly what it's been given for the free in for Kerry. The clock is stopped. There's Senan's getting treatment, so there's a bit of stoppage there. There's 5 seconds left on the stadium clock. Now you're thinking Sean O'Shea is not going to be able to kick it from there. Obviously, it's just too far out. If he goes short, he won't have time. So he has to kick it in. Then, I suppose Brendan Cawley actually signals to start the clock again. Sean O'Shea hesitates, doesn't kick it. I'm watching the stadium clock like a hawk, obviously, because only 5 seconds left, and that clock hasn't started. Um, Sean O'Shea eventually kicks it. The ball is nearly halfway into the square, and then it started again. Now, my big question with this is, and I don't know, will we get answers? And I think it should be a question that's asked: who actually has control of the clock? Is it the scoreboard operator or is it the fifth official? From what I hear, and maybe it is, that the fifth official is sitting beside the scoreboard operator and he's telling him when to hit start and stop. And probably press a hooter as well, which to me, it's an amateur organisation, but that feels so amateurish. Like, I just can't believe that a volunteer from a home county has control of that. And we're on about seconds here, and they had to even slow it down on the Sunday game to hear, did Kennedy get the fist off before the hooter? That's not even my biggest thing. It's actually the timekeeping of this. So I counted minimum 8 seconds on the TG Cahir thing, that we didn't have an angle of Brendan Cawley actually signalling that. So that's a minimum 8, probably around 10 or 11 was actually played. So I don't know. That's the best I can come up with, Ian. So I don't know what was your take on it.
Yeah, it's just confusion, Darragh. Like, I don't know that they've changed back the rule. I think Westmeath was it against Meath last year? In Garran, we had something similar, and the rule was nearly on the back of that game was sort of changed to the ball has to go dead. But now they've brought it back to the way it was, and it just leads to more confusion. Like, it's, as I said, these games are too big. There's too much riding on these games. Like, for Roscommon, they want to be in Division 1 next season, because let's be honest, Darragh, Division 1 is where it's at. It's where the big coverage of all the games. It's where your players learn about more about themselves playing the big teams. You talk to like the likes of Enda Smith, Diarmuid Murta, anyone that's been around that Roscommon team for the last 10 years, and they say Division 1 is where they want to be, because you learn so much about yourself. And for Roscommon, that's always going to be the underdog in Division 1, and for the game to be decided on, it's nearly a technicality. Like, what the TG Cahir clock says 2 seconds left, the stadium clock says 5 seconds left. Like, I talk about small margins, but there's too much at stake for it to be decided on. Well, should it be the TG Cahir clock or should it be the stadium clock? Or why isn't it all synced and sort of aligned so that we have a better understanding of what's going on? So there's going to be more of this. It's only the first weekend, and there's going to be more of it because there's very little between a lot of the teams in Division 1. And if it was only the first round of the league, imagine if it was an All-Ireland semi-final or an All-Ireland final that it came down to this hooter deciding. It'd be all-out war. Yeah. So, as I said, we need clarity on who is controlling the clock. It nearly needs to be a job just given to an official, as opposed to someone who's actually from the local club or the local county, because it's so important now in the modern game, as we've seen there in Killarney. And look, Roscommon have been on the wrong end of it this time around, and it's just a pity because that performance deserved more, definitely deserved a draw. And you could see the relief on the Kerry players' faces after. As they say, Yarrows, they got out of jail. Like,
yeah. Look, I wasn't a fan of it, full stop. Even under the old way, I preferred the one they actually reverted to. He was just cleaner. There was no real controversy after that. Even though I refer back to Westmeath Roscommon last year with a similar hooter issue, that the hooter actually went off and the keeper hadn't kicked the kick out, and Westmeath actually get a 2-pointer, nearly cost Roscommon promotion. So we've had a couple of last minute hooter issues on both sides of it for Roscommon. Now I put it up online, and I think Mortimer Murphy, I think he's a known journalist down in Kerry, and he was saying the clock only restarts when the player actually kicks the ball. The ref signals to restart the clock, but it's a bad rule to finish the game. It's not tidy. I'm not sure about that, because then again, could Sean O'Shea take 15 seconds if he wanted to then, when Brendan Cawley thing. So I don't know. I tried looking it up. There was nothing to say about kicking or anything. It's just, it's just not satisfactory, and it just
It's
takes
just
away.
too
Yeah,
it's just too messy, Darragh.
yeah,
It's just there's no clarity. There's too much left open to interpretation. Like if Sean O'Shea took that free again, maybe the clock would have gone off 2-3 seconds earlier, and the hooter would have sounded before Tomas Kennedy gets his hand to the ball. Like it's certainly not perfect, and in this environment where you have elite, I know we're an amateur organization, the GA, but it's an elite level players we're dealing with here. They deserve better than the sort of, well, was the hooter sounded, or did he get the fist of the ball before the hooter sounded? It's just such an unsatisfactory way to be left in the lurch, really, because that's what essentially is happening. You're left in the dark, and you're slowing it down to literally a millisecond to see, is it, did he get the shot off before the hooter went? Like it's if it keeps going the way it's going, there it'll be like VAR in the Premier League. It's
yeah,
going
yeah.
to become that controversial.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, and especially like that, and whoever was, and again, I'd like clarity on it. I don't know, will I get it, or I can look into it from from someone who was on the FRC that decided to bring this in. But who has control of the clock? That's the big thing I'm taking from it. I know there's a lot made of the hooter at the end, but actually it was the timekeeping left up to it. But again, it kind of shows every single second counts. When you have this in every single second, so whoever was on the scoreboard or the clock may have said, "Sure, what's only 2 seconds," But again,
No, it's everything. It's
it goes
everything
to
to
show there.
Roscommon.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything to Roscommon. But again, I come back to the point of the TG Cahir clock is
yeah,
3 seconds ahead of the stadium clock.
yeah.
So you have a discrepancy there straight away. So if you go by the TG Cahir clock, the score shouldn't have stood. But obviously, Brendan Cawley and the FRC will say, well, we should be going by
Well, it's the stadium one that counts. Yes, it's only the
stadium,
stadium one that counts. Yeah,
the stadium one that counts. But like we all should be singing on the same hymn sheet here.
yeah.
And when games of such fine margins coming down to decisions like that, it's not satisfactory. But look, Roscommon have to move on from that. There's a big game coming against Monaghan next weekend, and they got to make sure that coming up the home stretch, maybe they're far enough ahead that no hooter is going to deny them victory this time around.
Yeah, look, we could be here all day. It's not satisfactory, and I think, especially for the TV audience as well, just one thing: people watching at home, maybe a neutral is watching that. You see 2 seconds left. You say, "Why isn't the hooter going off?" It's just not satisfactory at all. This, at least the old way. I know that it was still out of sync, but when the hooter goes, they're still playing, so it wasn't as messy. The other point I'd be making as well, I watched Meath Derry on Saturday. And this could be another problem as well. There were about 40 seconds left, 30 seconds left. Derry are in their own half. They need a goal, and Meath are just cynically fouling them for 2 or 3 fouls in a row, knowing that they only have 30 seconds now. If we slow them down, that's 5-10 seconds gone. They're not going to get a goal. So you could lead to that as well in finishes, and that's just not what we want. So look, it needs to be looked at. We'll see. Will it be looked at, and can it be changed? I'm not sure because it was voted in. So it's technically set in stone now. So it remains to be seen. But this is only week one, so we'll see what happens.
That was the road Damon Fitzmaurice was going down. That it was delegates voted this in, lads. So I mean,
yeah.
it was your people in your own counties, especially Congress, and voted this in. So don't be coming looking at us.
Yeah.
We put it out there, and you voted it in. So kind of take your medicine and get on with it.
I know. Maybe it wasn't just looked at thing. I think everyone maybe just went up there to vote yes to everything and didn't look at the finer details. Who knows?
People about it, Darragh.
Yeah. So look, we'll wrap it up, Ian. One last word. Looking ahead to Monaghan, big game next week in the Hyde. You would hope we can get a big crowd in the Hyde based on that performance as well to give it a big lift. It's a big game already, second game. But if we bring that performance in, like we did yesterday, anything close to that, and hopefully maybe a small bit more, maybe a bit more progression, and bigger performances from some other players, surely we should be thereabouts come towards the end of the hooter again.
Yeah, it's a game now that, I would have said it was pretty much 50-50 before the first round of games. But again, based on the evidence we have from the weekend just gone by, Roscommon going to Kerry, putting in an absolutely brilliant performance, coming up short. Like Monaghan conceding 127 on their home patch in Clonus. And I don't think Armagh kicked too many 2-pointers. I think pretty much So, like, I'm hosted from play, Darragh. Am I right in saying that? It's not, I don't know what that says about, where the Monaghan defence is at, and, hopefully Roscommon can make the hay there on Sunday. The thing I would say about Monaghan is, last year when they came to the Hyde, we produced a very good second half performance. Conor Hand, Enda Smith, all the Jim Murtagh became Roscommon's all-time scorer. And we looked to be on an upward curve that day. By the time the league final came around, it had just flipped completely, and Monaghan had overtaken us, and that's the way it continued for the championship. So you'd be hoping that home advantage tends to have a kind of a say in these type of fixtures. The last 3 times Roscommon have played Monaghan in the Hyde, I think is nearly 3 years in a row now. They've won the last 2, so we've got to turn Hyde Park into a fortress over the next few games, and that's the only way we're going to stay in this division. But certainly the seeds of encouragement were planted in Killarney, and let's hope they germinate that a little bit further on Sunday.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed for a big win and a big crowd, as I said. Hopefully people can get out on Sunday. I think it's at 2 o'clock. Not on television as well, so that should actually help the crowd as well, hopefully, on Sunday against Monaghan. Ian, thanks as always for joining me this week. And remember, this podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcasts.